talking about returning to work. How did we feel? Why did we leave work in the first place? Why did we want to go back?
I think everyone has that mum guilt of going back to work anyway.
I didn't actually want to go back to work. So I'm like, well, what's the best way of doing this? Hey, let's have another child.
I do like working.
I'm trying to make that sound very positive. Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Bal
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Val.
And my name's Taj.
Today we're going to be talking about returning to work. How did we feel? Why did we leave work in the first place? Why did we want to go back? And just to let you know, I've been told to make this podcast positive because obviously I bring a downer on everything. So I will try my best to be more positive this week.
That's the little pep talk I'd done to you before we got started.
Exactly. So
let's see how it goes.
Yeah, by the end of it, everyone's going to be, oh my God. Okay, so return to work. How long were you off work? Why did you go off work?
So I was off work for about 7 years after I had my first child, and then I had this next child in between that time. And before I did start having kids, I never thought I'd stop working, well, especially for such a long time, to be honest. And I do like working. I'm trying to make that sound very positive.
Sure, you do. I think I like. What are we talking about? Okay, so we've discovered you enjoy working so much. It's the best thing that you've ever done. Okay.
Yeah, but then when I started enjoying that time not working, like meeting up for coffee, waking up in the morning and thinking, oh my God, I've got to do something, and then realizing actually, I really don't.
I got nothing to do.
It was such good times. And I remember them so really well because things have changed big time now. It's like, go.
But then you say that. So before you actually found your work, I remember you were moaning. You're like, oh, I need to do something. And so you're sort of sugarcoating the whole thing. That's not actually how it was in reality. You'd moan so much. I mean, of course, you're still moaning, but now it's about your work. Whereas before it's like, oh, I should be doing something. So it wasn't the unicorns, rainbows and clouds that you were talking about.
I think with me, I need to always keep busy. So when I was off work, I lived away in Norway, and I was trying to set up certain things in Norway, like business-wise. And then when I came back to the UK, I was setting up other little business ventures as well. So in between that time, although I was out of employment, should I say, I was still trying to set up some sort of ventures. So I think I found it really hard just to sit there and watch TV all day. I think it all depends on what type of person you are.
Okay, so I remember, if I look back at when I was off work, like there were certain times when I had both of the kids at this point. I mean, there's only an 18-month gap. So what ended up happening was after I had my 1 year mat leave from my main job, I went back to work and then informed them that I'll be back onto mat leave again because
I hate
that
those kind of people. Like, God, she's pregnant again. Get rid of her.
I know. Tell me about it. Right? I mean, who thought that employers were so sexist and there'd be a reason for it? But anyway, so I did go back, and after like a few weeks, I'm like, I'm pregnant again. It was a pretty awkward conversation. But anyway, I do remember, firstly, the reason I wanted the age gap to be quite close is, firstly, I wanted the kids to be quite close in age. But the other thing is, I didn't actually want to go back to work. So I'm like, well, what's the best way of doing this? Hey, let's have another child. And so I did.
Threaten my husband with that sometimes. I don't know if I should admit that. I do say, if I have another child, do I need to work? And he's like, no, you don't. I was like, oh, interesting.
But in reality, you actually have more work to do if you have a child. That's where the issue
Yeah,
comes.
I don't want to have another child.
I mean, do you think they
No.
should start giving mat leave if you were to, buy a pet like a fish?
I think there was a country that was looking into doing that.
No
I
way.
don't know. I don't know if I dreamt that up or something. I'm sure there was.
See, I'd totally do that. I mean, a fish is very low maintenance. I mean, I don't even clean
I
out the
don't
damn
think you'd
tank.
get it for a fish. I mean, you don't need to take a fish out for a walk, do you?
Well, I mean, if I got mat leave, I'd take it out for a walk.
Or in the bowl.
Yeah, why not? But anyway, what
But
I was going to say, one of the memories that I have is, if we're going to sugarcoat it, and this is going to be sugarcoating it, was I remember when the kids would both go to sleep at the same time. So at lunchtime, just after watching Neighbours, they would
can't
just
believe you still
before. No,
watch
no,
that.
sorry, just before. No, I don't have time now. Just before Neighbours, I'd put the kids to sleep. They'd be asleep for a good 3 hours. I'd run downstairs. I'd get my chocolate. I'd get my crisps. I'd get all the good stuff, right? Fizzy drink, everything. I'd eat. I'd watch TV, and then on the monitor when you'd start hearing them wake up, you're like, oh crap, it's been 5 hours. How are they not sleeping for another hour? So you go upstairs, keep them a bit more warmer so they'd go to sleep for another hour. So you
That
could
would.
carry on. But then you knew if you kept them asleep for another 2-3 hours, they would not go to sleep that night.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, okay, fine. I've had like 5 hours of this. I better
Oh
wake them
God,
up.
that is a long time.
Okay, they never had 5 hours. I'm really kidding. I mean, I'd barely make it to 2 hours. But you see what happens. But in reality, that's not actually what was true. I mean, I remember, and I spoke about this on another podcast, where after my first child, I was feeling a bit low, where I did want to talk to other people, which wouldn't have happened had I been at work at that point. And I didn't have a massive gap in my mat leave with one of my jobs. So I
Yeah.
literally went on mat leave just before, I think it was the 8th month, maybe 8.5, went back at 3 months. So I think I had 3.5 months off, right?
Mm.
So I was still very busy, but I was feeling very low. Not postnatal, however, quite low. So in reality, it wasn't quite the kids are asleep, I can watch TV all day long. It wasn't like that, because you actually have to look after the kids.
Yeah, because when I do look back, I always think, oh, I wish I could have done more while I was off work. And then in reality, if you think about it, the whole time is just the child's routine.
They
It's
won't
all
leave you
about,
alone.
I know, and then you can't get anything else done. But okay, you weren't away from work that long. Do you look back and think you wish that you were out of work for a bit longer?
Um, I mean, the job where I was away for a smaller amount of time, because of the negativity I got from colleagues,
Yeah,
I decided not to take a certain position or to step
yeah,
back from it in my second pregnancy, because I didn't want that negativity. I didn't want the headache of that and the stress of going back quickly.
yeah,
Because I think, look, at the end of the day, you're only going to have these times, maybe once, twice, three, four, maximum 5 times. Not that I'm having 5 kids, but you see what I
Are
mean.
you
You're not
trying to
going to
tell
have
me
this.
something?
No, I'm not telling you anything. But I definitely haven't got 5 kids. There's not triplets coming out of me right now. Sorry, no. But yeah, it's not going to happen forever. So I think you have to enjoy that time off, however you want to spend it.
I mean, one of the things with going back to work is to do with childcare. And if you do go back, who's going to look after your children? Now, in quite a lot of Asian families, it would be the grandparents that looked after the children. Yeah, and then in other cases, it's a case of having babysitters. Now, for me, I don't think I know anyone in my circles that have used, probably one person who I used to talk to, but not, I don't really know anyone else in the Asian circles who used a babysitter except for myself. I don't think it's a very done thing. I don't know if it's frowned upon, but I didn't disclose it to other people because I thought it would be frowned upon.
Oh, that's interesting. I
Mm.
never knew that. Why do you think it'd be frowned upon?
Just because you'd get, oh, why are you getting someone else to look after your kids, stay at home for longer? I don't know, just the negativity that would have come out of it, the judgment. So that's why I didn't really disclose it to other people. And I didn't think that I needed to.
The other thing is financially, though. I mean, did it make sense? I don't know in your case, But in a lot of the cases, financially, it doesn't make sense to do that anyway. You tend
For
to
me,
spend all of your money that you're making on your babysitter or your nursery or whatever. And then it's like, well, is there any point?
we'll see with me, I just went back part-time, and that meant that I only literally needed my son picked up, and I just needed the babysitter to keep him for about an hour and a half max. So it wasn't even that long. And for me, it was a case of building up my skills again, because I'd been out of work for so long. There was different issues that I needed to tackle as well. So it was almost slow cushion way of going back into work. So my first job back was an admin job, and it, not too much stress and easy, basically. Something that I didn't need to think about too much.
Are you happy that you did get the babysitter then?
Am I happy that I got the babysitter?
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets about it. I don't think at the time I did have that mum guilt of, oh my God. Well, I had that anyway with both the kids leaving them, although my daughter was old and she used to go to school full time. Yeah, I think everyone has that mum guilt of going back to work anyway. In regards to having a babysitter, no, I don't. I don't have that guilt. And to be honest, thinking back at it, it was really no one's business. And if they did judge, I'd say, well, you pay the bills then. I'm more than happy to stay at home if you're willing to pay pay the bills.
See, with me, it was, I had it easy in the case of, my mother-in-law looked after the kids, or if I went to East London, my mum would look after the kids if I was at work. So I always had a grandparent that would look after the kids. And the other thing is, it took the pressure of, oh, I need to be home at this point, at this time. Yeah, you'd be like, okay, I've given 4 o'clock, so it's pretty, not acceptable for me to be coming in at 10 o'clock, which I never did. But
Yeah.
but I
Tell
did.
someone who's actually listening. Yeah.
So that was a positive thing, because I didn't have that stress. It's like, oh, okay, I'm half an hour late. Sorry about that. It was never that. And the other thing is, I think it builds up a really nice relationship between the child and the grandparents.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, even for their relationship and your sanity as well. I mean, staying at home, and this is what I was talking about before. When I stayed at home in the first year, I was feeling low because I wasn't talking to that many people, and it's all about the child. It's like this. It's quite a big experience. I mean, no one tells you how much of a life changer. Yeah, they say it, but you don't quite realize it, I guess, when you're going through it. Especially, I found with my first child rather than the second, because then you just chuck them in the mix. But
I do agree, because, for example, when you'd go to, I don't know, even your parents' house, and say, for example, I don't know, not that I used to go without my kids, but it was like, oh, where's the child? And you're kind of left second best, or not, you're not a person anymore, it feels like.
And I've had that where I've gone without, I think I've only gone a few times, handful of times, to mum and dad's, and they're like, where are the kids? It's like, oh, they're not here. They're like, okay, cool.
Go back home then. Why are you here?
Okay, cool. It's obviously not that bad, but it is quite funny. It's like, okay, hi, I'm here, look after me. But yeah, no, I've had that a few times. But then going back to what you were saying about mum guilt, and just in regards to that, I felt that I had more mum guilt the first time I was on mat leave rather than the second time, and I had to go back to work.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I went back quite quickly after my first child anyway, and I did feel guilty about it at times, and I'd leave them till quite late because I was at work, not out
Party.
on the boozer. But
although saying that, do you remember that incident about when the police knocked around our house?
No.
You don't remember?
Yeah, but that had nothing. Wait a second, that had nothing to do with returning to work, did it?
Well, I think it's a good story to tell.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with this podcast. Why are we mentioning it?
Now everyone probably wants to know what we're talking about.
Well, then they have to wait for another podcast because it's got nothing to do with this return to work.
All right, we'll put it into another podcast.
Okay, fine. Although I'm just wondering which incident you're talking about, because there were.
Oh, so there were many, were there, that the police knocked at your door, was there?
Well, there were 2 incidents.
Oh, were there 2?
Yeah, but
Oh,
we're not going to go into it because
we'll discuss that in another podcast then.
that's fine. Even though I wasn't charged with anything, I didn't do anything dodgy, by the way, just to let you know. Anyway, going back to it. So, yeah, I found that I had more mum guilt after the first time rather than the second time. Second time, I was more blasé. I mean, I remember someone asking how my second child was. I was like, breathing, that's good enough for me, sort of thing. Obviously, I didn't mean it. It is just a tongue-in-cheek sort of comments like that. But did you think there was a difference between how you took it the first time and second?
There is, and I was speaking to a mum not so long ago, and I was saying, with your first child, just generally, like you'd count how many months they are and stuff like that, and then with your second child, you're like, yeah, they're about 2 years or something like that. You just don't do the month thing because you haven't got that much energy to work that out and stuff like that. And I think it's pretty common. Obviously, again, not everyone does that, but I think it to the second child, you're like, yeah, feed yourself.
See,
Drop yourself to the kitchen.
stay away from the knives. But I was going to say, you say that, but one of my friends, I met her after ages, and she's got 2 kids. And you know how with the first one, you're like, okay, I'm going to get organic this. I literally remember going to Tesco's trying to find organic oats, and I'd
Yeah.
researched oats, what kind of oats they should be. Anyway, with the second child, I don't go through that. I'm not like, okay, they need to eat, I just didn't do that. Whereas she
Well,
did.
they need to eat full stop, or they need to eat
No,
organic.
no, you have to feed them, otherwise they start moaning. So you still feed them, but yeah, it wasn't as intense. So not everything had to be organic. You know, if it was in the kitchen, if a bit of chocolate or whatever, I didn't actually do that. But anyway, so one of my friends, she's still on it. Like,
Is she working?
yes.
Oh God.
So I can't even use that as an excuse. I mean, I was talking to my other friend that was there. I was like, look, if
I
you
wish I
want to
could be that
see,
mum.
I said this to her. I go, look, if you want to be a good parent, follow what she's doing. Okay. And she's like, yeah, no, I get it. I was like, what? But yeah, so it is funny as to how relaxed you get. I'm going to use the word relaxed rather than lazy.
But also, you know, when you're at work, I had that issue about worrying, for example. I don't know if this was just me being really intense. I was like, okay, if a parent, if the school phones, how am I going to do this? Am I going to tell my manager? Oh my God, I need to quickly get home, or I'm going to phone my husband to go and get them. And I used to play all these scenarios in my head of what would happen if the school phoned and I needed to go and collect the child. Or actually, another thing, when the babysitter, she used to always message me, yes, I've picked up your child. And I used to, for the whole, I think it was 6 months, every time. And it was only 2 days a week that she used to do it. But it was like, oh, is everything okay? And she's like, yes, I've picked him up. He's okay. He's doing this and this. I don't know if that's normal to do, but it was like every time I was like, oh, did you pick him up? Almost like scared that they didn't.
Yeah, but I get that. That totally makes sense. I'd have been the same. I get that.
Yeah.
But the babysitter probably got that as well, which is why she was texting and
Yeah, that's
letting you know,
true.
yeah, no, everything's good. I got your child, and
I mean, did you go through the scenario of, oh, if the school phones, how, where am I going to be? Am I going to get there in time? How am I going to get, all those scenarios that you play in your head? Or is that,
no, I never thought of that. I mean, if the school phones, I will pick it up straight away,
yeah,
because that's never a good sign, I find.
yeah,
So I never had the situation where I played through how I'd do it, because I'd usually just, with the jobs that I was in and how
yeah,
life's
yours were
planned
different.
out, I sort of just drop everything and go. Or if I can't, I'm quite fortunate in the fact that the way we did it was we did the nursery close to my in-laws and things like that, so that they were the other people on the list. If I had to, I'd just ring them and say, can you pick them up?
Well, see, that's another thing as well. I mean, quite a lot of the podcasts that we've done, we've spoken about the negative of being in a community or in a close knit family. But I think the very brilliant thing and positive thing about being around family is you can do that. For example, if my husband and me need to go out for a dinner, for example, with a work thing or anything, my brother in law would support us and help us. And so, you're close and you're with family and you can get that support as well, which is an amazing thing. Every family's got its negative, but it's also got that big positive as well, being support for each other in.
Definitely. And again, it's the peace of mind of, look, if anything happened, I can phone this person. There is someone there that can help me. So
I
yeah, of
mean,
course that's important.
yeah, I mean, even the idea of having your family look after your child when they are young and you're going to work, I think you'd be in a place you wouldn't worry so much because you're like, they're blood at the end of the day. They want the best for the child. Not saying that a babysitter wouldn't, but that bond with a family member is special. So I
But
don't
then,
think I would have worried so much.
but do you know what's really interesting? I think the first time I found that when I went, was going to, not let, but if I had to go to work or whatever, and I'd get someone else to look after them, I suppose this is the mum guilt actually, where it's a case of,
Mm.
you'd have to thank the person, and they're like, you really don't need to thank me. I wanted to do it, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Who really wants to look after a child? That's not true. Um, right? But there would be that, you know, someone else, and you try and do everything yourself. Like, oh, I don't. It's also the influence over the child as well, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. I found, if there's certain things like especially with my first child, I didn't want them to eat sweets and chocolates because I was in a dental industry, so I knew the negativities of it. Whereas, the grandparents would give the chocolates, both sides,
Mm.
straight away, and it's like, oh, I don't want that to happen. Whereas now it's just like, well, they can give it. It's not the end of the world, and
Yeah.
it's not, and it's quite a nice bond. Like it's like, oh, we're going to our grandparents' house and getting the sweets and chocolates. So I find this with a lot of Asian girls actually, where it's a case of,
Mm.
no, I want to do everything by myself so that I've got the influence. And it's like, well, they have had their children. I mean, there's negativity about those children perhaps, but overall, I mean, they're still alive, they're still breathing, it's all good. And
I think, yeah, I was talking to a friend not so long ago, and she was just talking about basically her in laws offering help. And I
mm,
said to her, they're offering you help, so don't keep saying no, no, no to it. Take that
but
help,
then why is she saying no? Is it because she doesn't want to burden them, or is it because she
burden
doesn't
them.
want to influence her kids so
I
much?
think it was more about burdening them. And I said, well, they're there, they're your family, they know they're there to support you. They wouldn't have offered. And if they did it out of just, hey, she'll say no anyway, well, the next time they won't ask if you say yes this time, and then you'll know that it wasn't genuine.
But then, see, this is what I'm saying. So from our side, we might think it's a burden, but it's actually from their side of, actually, no, I want to do this. Like, give us the opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it is an interesting one. Whereas I found with my second child, it's like, actually, no, I don't mind the influence you have over my kids, because hopefully it's positive, and if it's not, then it's
God help
fine.
them.
Yeah. Good luck
well
to
what
you lot.
well, what about actually going back to work? Because the 7 years going back, I did find that I was tackling many issues. I'd say more mental health things like lack of confidence, that imposter syndrome, and thinking, oh my God, well, which is imposter syndrome, thinking, oh my God, I shouldn't be here. I'm not good enough, or all right, as an admin job, but still having an imposter syndrome, thinking, oh my God, am I going to do something wrong? Am I meant to know this? I don't know how to use the printer. Silly things.
See, this is, and I know I've brought this up in a few podcasts, this is quite a common element though, isn't it? Because when we're away from anything, we feel like we've lost touch, and the world moves on. I mean, technology is crazy. Within 7 years, it definitely would have changed in your workplace when you went back. So I think the
Definitely.
bigger the gap, obviously it becomes, I would have thought, a bit harder. Whereas when I went back, because the gap was a lot shorter, I didn't find that as much. But then it was a work-life balance more for me that I had.
I mean, and this is the reason why we did introduce FYI for your inspiration. Basically, we offer different workshops to tackle problems like this, or issues, should I say, about imposter syndrome, etc., and which you can find on Facebook.
So just in regards to FYI, so the Facebook group is FYI CIC, and we're also on Instagram. So yeah, please do join. And we've got a number of free workshops an absolutely fantastic feedback that we've been getting on these workshops. And the great thing is, when we're doing these workshops, is firstly, all of the women have gone through the same thing. And what's really interesting that's come out of it is, because we haven't discussed some of these issues with other people, you don't realize what someone else is going through. And they are going through very similar situations like yourself. And it is, though, vocalizing of it, and then you're like, actually, well, this is a common problem, and this is something we need to be talking to our employers about as well. So it's been really interesting doing these workshops and talking to women that are going through the same thing. So yeah, please do, listeners, join FYI CIC on Facebook and Instagram, so you will find out about the next workshops. So just moving on slightly, in regards to having that time off, 7 years is a big part of your life.
It
What was
was.
your thought process of firstly wanting that time off, and then why you decided to have that time off as well?
Well, I was in a bit of a predicament, to be honest. We moved away to Norway, and I didn't know the language there, so I didn't. It was hard to get a job for a foreigner. Um, Actually, yeah, being called a foreigner was really horrible when I was in that country. But anyway, I was a foreigner, and so we didn't even think about me starting work, me and my husband. And I did, like I said, I did enjoy that time. But towards the end, I started getting sick of going for coffees with people. It's like, and then just sitting there and having the same conversations. But
But you know what?
now,
Yeah, see, the funny thing is, because I'd always be like, oh, why are you wasting your time? Da, da, da. Whereas now, we've had a few conversations where now I'm doing that. And you're like,
yeah,
oh, this is a flip, isn't it, in the situation? I'm like, well, I'm kind of enjoying it, actually.
yeah, to be honest, I did. Now looking back, I don't think you appreciate the time when you're in it,
Yeah.
because now I'm thinking, oh, I wish I could do that again, because I've got, being busy with work and everything. Your time's filled up with work, and then you need to sort out the kids as soon as they come home. And it is a case of, I don't think, like we were discussing in our previous podcast, balancing work and home life. It's just, I don't think anyone's come up with a perfect formula. And if they have, it's been for a little while, but it doesn't work for for life, basically, I would say. I mean, I've thought of many ways of doing this. For example, making sure that I prioritize things, only put certain amount of time towards tasks or whatever, but it's still, you end up still going back down the same track.
But then I think it's the priority that you have in life. And I know that's really easy to say. I think you've got to choose the right time that you want to go back to work. If it is straight away, perfect. But then it's, how do you balance how much time you want to spend with the kids and work? Because I think it is very hard to strike the right balance. And if you're not striking the right balance, then what do you need to take out, or what do you need to change in your life, right?
So for me, before I had kids, I used to have a full-time job, and now going back, I've got a part-time job, and I think as long as I can, I would just keep it part-time, because like you said, you have to reevaluate things in your life. And COVID, I know we hate hearing about COVID, but it has made us rethink about what is important in life. And you've got to do things that you really enjoy. And obviously you've got to look at the financial side, being realistic. But yeah, reevaluation, I think you have different outlook on life when you have kids.
But then, do you think that you'd ever go to a full time position, even when the kids are a lot older and they don't need you, but need
Oh god,
you?
that's a horrible thing to say.
I mean, need you less.
I think yeah, well, I think with FYI, I will continue on a full-time position because I enjoy doing that.
Mm.
Um, and if you enjoy it, you would be willing to continue in a full-time position when the kids are, for example, in secondary school or wherever anyone thinks is right for them. I mean, some people do go back full-time, and credit to them, because I don't know how they do it, balancing everything, but credit to them. I think everyone has their own path and there's no right or wrong.
But then, devil's advocate, do you think that if you are a full time mum, and you're in a good position to say this because you've seen both sides of it,
Yeah.
do you think you are a better mother if you're off work?
No, Not really. I don't think it makes you a better mother if you're off work. Yes, you've got that time to spend with the kids, but I think being away from the kids as well, it kind of, I would compare it to doing an exam or revising for an exam. You shouldn't constantly just revise, revise, revise. If you take that break, then you come back to it. You might see a problem in a different way or tackle an issue in a different way. You'll come with a fresh view on things. And I think like going to work, for example, I wanted to do it mainly because I wanted my daughter to see that women do go to work as well. And I think that for me was very important. One of the main reasons why I went back to work. I'm not saying that a woman is not valued if they stay at home, because it's important for a child to know that a mother that stays at home with their kids is very important as well. But for me personally, I wanted her to see that women can work and they can have other things in their life, not just complete just looking after kids,
See,
their own things.
from my perspective, it was a case of being away from the kids meant that the time that I was with them had the quality rather than the quantity. And I really
Yeah.
felt that when I went back, because I actually wanted to be around them.
What are you trying to say?
Well, too much time is tough sometimes, right?
It is, because you don't get that thinking. And also, I think it's nice to also going back to work, I felt like my own person. I felt like a human being again, not just so and so's mum. I was Taj. I was a person in myself, and I now had my own thing. It wasn't all about the kids anymore.
See, the other thing that's interesting, I think we've discussed it on a previous podcast, was how everyone else reacts to it as well. And the sort of response that you get from people that you know of, oh, so you actually work, so you do something valuable. And that's not to say if you stay at home, it's not valuable, because, people have been doing it for years, right? But
Exactly.
the other people treat you differently.
Yeah, I've seen. I don't know if this is just in the Asian community, but you do. I don't know. You get a bit more authority or respect. Would I say respect if you work? Whereas if you're a home mother, I don't think you get that same. I don't think this is for everyone. This is just personally me talking. Um, I don't think you get that same sort of, hey, you do something valuable, and I think that is really sad, to be honest. And I did feel that in those 7 years, the way people used to talk to me is different when I used to work and not work.
But then it's funny because, again, we've discussed this previously, but in the Asian community, it's sort of taken that you are going to stay at home. Whereas, again, I've said this before, one of my friends, who isn't Asian, actually said it would have been strange, and others would have thought it was strange that she didn't go to work. So it's a different point of view from different communities as well, isn't it?
I mean, one thing that I found is like even a woman that's very well educated or whatever, they do reevaluate their position after they've had children. Um,
Yeah, I do agree with that because, like I said, although we made a bit of a joke of it, when I actually went off on mat leave, it was a case of I'm going to go on this mat leave and I'm not planning to come back. And then the year goes and you're like, oh crap, I've got to go back to work. And it's a bit of a shock because the time comes so quickly.
yeah,
And I don't think it matters how long that time is, whether it's a short amount of time or a long amount of time, it does go really quickly.
yeah, that is true. I mean, when you, for example, you do go back to work, like I was saying, all those different emotions that you feel. But if you surround yourself with positive people and you have those, even at work, if you had those people that believe in you and help you, you do feel supported and you don't have that, I don't know, don't feel so bad about working.
So let's finish off the podcast here. I just want to repeat we are and have started the FYICIC to help women returning to work, mainly because of the experiences we went through, but also reasons for a lot of our friends and family have also gone through as well, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's anxiety, imposter syndrome, or other things, or right the way to things like work-life balance or how you return to work and helping your confidence. So please do join FYI CIC so you can have a look at the workshops as well, because this podcast and those workshops are for you. So just to finish off, we love our kids. We are very, very lucky. And whether you stay at home or go to work, I think one thing I realized when I finished my mat leave, or when I was on my mat leave, is you can either look at the experience as a negative or take it for what it is. You're very lucky to be in the position that you are. So on that point, goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.